In the year 2020, I started a podcast about movies. Some episodes occasionally focused on other media as well. As I dealt with threatening interdimensional beings, I eventually met my other self from another universe where all the stuff I talked about got delayed. As it turns out, the stories as me and my guests described them were presented very differently in that other universe. So I continued podcasting these recaps, which apparently sound like improvised reviews, to entertain listeners of that other universe while they waited for the new release dates. Some episodes even focused on content of years past that did not come out in that other universe for whatever reason. The year is 2022. The podcast is now bi-weekly, unless stated otherwise. My name is Shinder, and you're listening to Delayed Replay. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we recap and review movies that got delayed in that other universe but came out on time in our universe. I'm your host, as always, Shinder, and joining me once again, you may have heard him on a couple previous episodes in past seasons. He's here to talk about Black Panther Wakanda Forever with me. It is Vinny Tangerlini. How's it going?
It's good. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, it's cool to see you again. Like, you flew all the way from Chicago to Irvine for the Coup de Comedy Festival.
That's right. As I do every year in this universe.
Yeah. Yeah, like this movie came out like in the middle of the coup, so we watched it like late Thursday night and are now like recording this around breakfast, and I'm gonna be like editing this frantically in between stuff so it comes out Saturday. But yeah, so that's what's going on. Like, yeah.
We're committed. We're very committed.
This is an interesting one, especially with Chadwick Boseman's passing. Great actor, and for a while we weren't sure how they were gonna do this, and we'll get into that. But what were your first experiences with Black Panther, the Marvel character? Like, was it via the movies or other media?
I've been a Marvel buff for a while, so I definitely knew of the character, though I hadn't really gone down the comic book rabbit hole or anything. So really just sort of cursory knowledge until that was it Winter Soldier? Like the trailer for Winter Soldier.
Civil War is
Civil War.
Yeah.
Civil War, right. Where they were like, oh, Black Panther's in this. And I was like, oh, sweet. And so definitely did some more like digging into the world of Black Panther. But up until the character being introduced in the MCU, it was more of just like, I know that character exists. I roughly know the deal of Black Panther, but that was about it. So it's been kind of fun to parallel, see how it's happening in the MCU, and then do deeper dives simultaneously.
Yeah, my first experience with the character was in the 2006 video game Marvel Ultimate Alliance.
Oh, yes!
Yeah, it was like, that was a game that got me like super interested in Marvel. Like, before then, I only really watched like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, and then playing the game, it was like, whoa, all these characters are in the same universe, and just spiraled out from there. But yeah, Black Panther had like some really cool moves in that game. Like, you could get up close and just claw your way at people, and like how fluidly he moved, like, is just so cool. And so for years, me and my brother wanted to see him in the MCU, and I know there was like that short-lived Black Panther cartoon which had such a catchy theme song.
Yes.
And even though Civil War was kind of just okay to me, Black Panther was easily one of the best parts of that movie. Like, anytime he was on screen, and again, Chadwick Boseman did such an excellent job. It was just like, if I was ever like, if the film ever felt like it was dragging, like, he would show up and just pull me right into the narrative. And just seeing the character in his solo film and these other movies, and it was just so cool. And I even read most of the like Black Panther comics. You know, after Chadwick's passing, Comixology had this sale where they had like a few hundred Black Panther issues that were free, and so I took advantage of that. And there may
Yeah.
be like a couple storylines here and there in the late 80s, early 90s I don't have, but like seeing like how things have changed over the years, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, such an allegorical character coming out in the 60s and 70s to then to be so relevant still to, 2020 times.
Yeah, like yeah, the 2020s.
Yeah.
What was your reaction when you saw the first Black Panther solo film?
It was weird for me because I'm a comedian, I'm a funny guy. I'm drawn to the humorous Marvel movies
Right.
more than the more serious ones. So I'm definitely more of your like, oh, Guardians or even the Spider-Mans were more my style. But Black Panther, I mean, Marvel does a great job balancing humor in all its movies. But I would say Black Panther was much more of a serious tone than
Yeah.
say like Guardians. And I loved it. It was surprising to me because, I see every Marvel movie I was in. It was getting rave reviews, so I knew it was going to be good. But I was so surprised that I loved it as much as I did. I would say it's in the top 3 for me of all the Marvel films, which is weird because usually it's like I want the funny ones. Like, so to have it be like, whoa, this hit me in a way that I was super invested and interested in the storyline and in it from the jump was uh, was a different experience for me compared to the other Marvel movies of more of a serious gravitas, even like some of the Iron Mans or something where it's like just it has more serious tone. Those didn't hit me as hard as Black Panther did. So I really, really loved the movie.
Yeah, it felt different from some of the other films, and it was very refreshing. Like the soundtrack isn't the type of music I typically look for, but I was surprised how into it I was, and just all the like costuming and how they brought Wakanda to life. It was
Mhm.
truly a cultural achievement in cinema.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great way to say it.
Yeah. With this sequel titled Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I'm not sure how they're dealing with it in that other universe, but over here it's like kind of weird. Like, Marvel's been doing the multiverse thing this past a year ago. Around this time, we got Doctor Strange in the multiverse of madness. Apparently, the other universe is just getting it in time for Mother's Day weekend, which is funny because multiverse of madness has an acronym as mom, so it's like Doctor Strange in the mom. But
That sweet, sweet Mother's Day audience of Doctor Strange
yeah.
fans.
But yeah, they've like featured the multiverse in that, and like these Spider-Man movies, and
Mhm.
now in here where it's like there's this, I guess this is taking place around the same time where there's that fallout from weird stuff going on with the multiverse, and like it keeps shifting like between like different universes and whatever. So what we get in Wakanda Forever is kind of like this mishmash of different universes where we see different scenarios of how they might handle this, and it almost feels like an anthology. And at times like the structure is like really whack. Like what did you think of this decision?
It's it's kind of it's some hard resets throughout it's nice they all tie together at the end, so I think it makes it a solid thing, but it kind of like you were saying, it's almost vignette or anthology in the first like 2 acts of the movie. We're getting like these different versions of how Black Panther could be, um, which I think was a nice way, sort of, to tie in uh, and and honor Chadwick. I think they did that nice, and then sort of to play with the multiverse. It's like, okay, if that's an inciting event and all these different things spread out from that, I think that was really interesting, but it does give you a bit of a jarring, like almost like Loki, the TV show or something, where it's a little
Right.
like, oh, it's resetting hard each time.
Yeah, it kind of feels like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too and show
Mhm.
us all these different options, like seeing how we'll react and what might be the best. Like in one of these, Shuri becomes the next ruler after like something happens to T'Challa, and in another, like T'Challa is a different actor. Like they got John David Washington, who was in Tenet, and
Mhm.
in another one of these, like weirdly, they like introduce the Fantastic Four because I guess this is an homage to like how Black Panther's first appearance was in a Fantastic Four comic, but here, like the way they do it is that like, oh, he went on the space mission with them, and as a result, he also becomes invisible, but he's also inaudible. So it's like this, like in that particular version, it's this weird cop out thing of like, oh, you can't see or hear him, but you can
But he's
see the
there.
attacks he's doing.
Yeah. I liked the version that uh T'Challa never existed. Like there's one where it's like, oh, like because he died in the multiverse, there's a whole separate universe where he never ever came to pass. And so Killmonger is in charge of Wakanda. And it's kind of an interest, so it like they're only in that universe very briefly, but that one really registered to me of like what a weird take. But it was cool to
Yeah.
see Michael B. Jordan back, Like I like that.
Yeah, I mean, we see him back in more ways than one. Like, because of these universes colliding, we even see interactions with Michael B. Jordan Human Torch from the really bad Fantastic Four movie.
Yes. Yep. It's worlds collide, man.
Yeah, it's like of
We can
all
get Toby
things.
Maguire, we can get anybody.
Yeah, like they're really leaning into the multiverse thing, and it kind of feels like they're maybe I don't know, like at this point I kind of feel like I'm getting multiverse fatigue, but like when you're watching the movie in the moment, you're just glued to like what's going on because it's like new and fresh. So like I might need to see this movie again to really process all of this. But yeah, like we got all these different options. There's even one where Storm from the X-Men is there. Like she, because she married T'Challa, but after his passing, she becomes the ruler of Wakanda because they got married in this universe. That one of the
Yeah.
universes we see. Interesting way of bringing in the X-Men, but I don't know if this will be the Storm we keep following, like as they do more X-Men stuff.
Yeah, it's tough to say. We get about like 6 or 7 different universes, and it's tough to say what they're going to land on and keep. The movie does a nice job combining them all, but it doesn't really give us a conclusive way of being like this is what we're going to move forward with in future movies. But it's cool because we get so many different things. It's almost like The Prestige or something where I like need to rewatch and look for all the Easter eggs so that I can be like, oh, I wonder if like which of these pieces will continue in the MCU and which were just sort of the what if, right, of this movie.
Right, like what if T'Challa was Star-Lord that episode?
Yeah, it has a little bit of that vibe where it's like some of these are universes that are just burned. We've done them in this movie and we're never going to see him again. And some
Yeah.
feel like this is going to come back somehow or this character will or even this character from this universe will find their way into the mainstream MCU universe and and tag along. I'm not sure, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, there's even one where T'Challa, like they're like, where is he? And he returns as like a literal like giant Black Panther, and it's
Mhm.
like, oh, that's pretty cool for this movie, but might not be a good choice to continue that way in a future movie because then you get into the old like cliche of like there's a problem in Hollywood where like the person of color gets turned into an animal for a majority of the thing. So I don't think they'll
Totally.
continue from that, but it was kind of cool to see for that little vignette that we saw.
Yeah,
um
it was very vignette and we got a lot of different things. But I agree with you. I think some it was like this is just burned. We just saw 10
Yeah,
minutes
like
of
there's
this.
no way they're gonna do this.
They're not gonna do this again. They were playing the what if game. Like, well, what if it was this? Here's a taste of that. That's all you're getting. We're now going back to uh, a different version of this story.
Throughout all these vignettes, we get pretty much the same basic conflict, which is that people in our universe will know that Namor from Atlantis appeared in Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and so this kind of continues a thread from that, where he and the Atlanteans were, because back in that movie they were guarding Alcatraz, which had been converted into something like the Raft, and now like they're really pissed off out of how the government handled things and let Carnage escape. And there's like all this like politics and back and forth, and like some of it like I don't fully understand, but for some reason Atlantis and Wakanda are at war with each other throughout this movie. Like, are you as confused as I am? Like, how did this happen?
I feel like there's something in one of the universes where they mentioned something about the like vibranium being like something, but it's so throwaway. Again, I feel like it's like the Prestige. You have to rewatch it and look for
Yeah.
Easter eggs.
Yeah, they also mentioned adamantium, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah,
But
I think it's something to do with like precious resources that these fantastical secretive worlds have is kind of the vibe I got that they were also like maybe there's a bit of the Highlander like there could only be one secret country, and Atlantis wants to be it, right? Like
yeah, like Namor meets with T'Challa in one of these and is like, the people on the surface are failing. They're ages behind our civilizations. They're not as advanced, and they're letting the evils from above affect the earth. And so like you should like join us, like pretty much like us against them type of thing. And T'Challa's like, yeah, I'm not so sure about that type of thing. Obviously they don't like do like CGI Chadwick Boseman, but yeah, when they have like the other actor, or like when they have like someone speaking for him when he's like invisible and inaudible, we see like different versions of this interaction. And it's like, yeah, basically Wakanda and Atlantis are at war, and it's basically this thing of we're finally getting like these two big Marvel civilizations like fighting each other.
yeah, which is really weird to introduce in this movie, but I think is a cool. I don't know. I feel like the MCU is definitely in a phase where it's blowing the world up and showing you all the pieces, and it's doing a hard. It has to kind of rebuild itself to build up to something like a second Infinity War, and so introducing Atlantis is key. They don't really solve that problem, which is maybe the biggest bummer of the movie, is that a lot of stuff gets introduced, not a lot gets solved. So it feels very like bait for a new movie. But but that said, like bringing Atlantis into it really introduces another level of villainy,
Yeah.
and gives us a chance to see sort of rather than like leaning hard into other larger like Atlantis is clearly a piece of the puzzle but isn't the puzzle master, so it's kind of like building up to something bigger, which I like.
Yeah, and the Atlantis, as it's depicted in this movie, is kind of reminiscent of the one that's in Disney's Atlantis: The Lost Empire,
Yeah.
which
100%. With the
which
little crystals into the fish motorbikes.
yeah, I mean, it
Very
makes
badass.
sense since it's Disney, so I kind of wonder if they're trying to gauge whether they can finally do like a live action Atlantis movie, which I mean, I don't know why they haven't done it yet. People obviously want it.
That movie did so bad, the animated
Yeah.
one, because it was just too much, I think, for the time. But man, a live action one would slay. And if it was tied into the MCU, I think people would lose their minds.
Yeah, it was very different from some of the other like anthropomorphic animal Disney animated movies. Like I think it leans a little bit closer to the Iron Giant, which is like a
Yeah.
Warner Brothers thing, and it's
Hmm.
also a period piece. And
It's
yeah,
tonally dark too. Like it's very so much of Atlantis is very like we're in it for the money and we don't care about civilization. It's like,
right.
whoa. But like, I don't know, it's funny to revisit because Wakanda and Atlantis are two sides of the same coin, right? They're very like we're willing to reach out to other people, but not at the risk of losing what we have. And that's always been like Wakanda's journey. That's the whole journey of the first one is like, can Wakanda just stay little protected Wakanda and still be the power player it is in the world? And Atlantis is like, yes. And Wakanda's like, no, we have to like work with the people around us. And Atlantis is like, no, we will protect what's ours and destroy everybody else and keep what's ours and take more. So it's two sides of that challenging coin.
Yeah, and I also forgot to mention that when the movie starts and you see the Marvel Studios logo, you know how they usually do like the montage of clips. They do a montage of Chadwick Boseman's performances and his Marvel films, like dun,
Mhm.
dun, 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 and like him fighting as Black Panther is just so good. Like the audience went wild, like with applause during that moment.
Totally. It's a good, it's a nice homage to him. They do lots of little things throughout the whole thing that really honor the character, the actor, uh, while still servicing the MCU, advancing the plot, making it make sense. Uh, they do a good job.
Yeah, like throughout the movie, there are lines here and there where the Wakandans talk about how death is not the end because memories are forever. Or I'm kind of butchering it, but the sentiment there that like we remember the heroes who were with us and they'll never be forgotten as long as we honor them.
Yeah. They do a nice parallel in some of the universes too with T'Challa and T'Chaka and like tying in this like these are our fallen leaders but they are still a part of our world. Um which I think is a nice it's almost like Mufasa and Simba like
Yeah.
like they do a good job being like even though they're gone they're a part of this world, which I think allows the movie to get away with some of the weird choices it makes.
Yeah, the goofy multiverse stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like with the Fantastic Four, like we get John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic and Emily Blunt as Invisible Woman. What'd you think of the choices for the Thing and the Human Torch of that particular iteration?
Yeah, I mean Krasinski and Emily Blunt. That's a stellar pairing, truly a stellar pairing. I have no problems with Courtney B. Vance as the Thing, like, or at least the voice. He's the voice of the Thing, which I think is perfect. But like, didn't expect it. But what a choice! Human Torch. That is maybe the most surprising. Is Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
Like, who saw that coming?
Yeah, and it's kind of confusing because like people have wanted a couple of these casting choices for a while, so it's like, are they going to continue with this, or is this just for this movie and giving the fans a glimpse of what they wanted? Like, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, like is Courtney B. Vance really signed on to do multiple movies as the Thing? I don't think so.
Yeah, and we even get Doctor Doom at some point because in the comics he is part of the reason why T'Challa falls and Shuri has to take up
Hmm.
the mantle. And weirdly, they got Andy Serkis again. Like he's not playing Claw in this movie, but he's doing the motion capture and voice work for Doctor Doom in this movie.
And it's pretty good. Like he is not recognizably uh Andy Serkis. I mean, like we knew it was him because of the motion capture and stuff, but it's unlike a lot of the voice work he's done before.
Yeah, like I think people, because they're so used to Gollum, they're not so used to how deep his voice can get, like with Caesar and Planet of the Apes, or
Mhm.
when when he did the audiobook for The Hobbit. He does like a really intimidating Smaug. It's
Yeah, his
so
smell is
good.
so good. So yeah, like, dude, dude's great.
Yeah.
He's in it for about a minute and a half, maybe, but it's worth
Yeah.
it.
They tie in like all these different Marvel characters, but like surprisingly, those particular things don't overshadow. Like it's mostly Wakanda still, and like they're the main focus of the movie. And we get like some of the characters we got before, like like the Wakandans. Like we even get like a couple new characters. Have you ever watched the TV show Atlanta?
Yes. I'm not all of it, but yes, I've seen that.
Okay, well, this isn't a spoiler, but on a recent episode, they say they're going to watch Black Panther 2 and that Lorenz Tate and Whoopi Goldberg are in it. And I thought that was like just a joke for that episode, but watching this movie, it's like, oh wait, they actually are in it. They're like a couple of the Wakandans, like really high up, helping make the decisions.
Yeah. It's cool. I don't know. They did a good job tying stuff like that in. There's a lot of fun cameos in this. Uh, and Whoopi's particularly funny.
They got like a really good cast all around, like with some of the returning actors like Lupita Nyong'o, and they even got Michaela Coel.
Mm.
I can't remember the name of her character because again there are so many, but she had like really cool fighting skills.
It's cool. Like, so many of the side characters take up the Black Panther mantle in some of these different universes. So it's cool to get to see sort of the building of a lot of these characters, even though it's tough to tell. Like, I think they kind of, most of the vignettes have Shuri taking up the mantle, so I think that's sort of the universe they're headed into. But I really liked when Mbanku took it, and when Okoye is kind of like in charge of the Black Panther fights. There's
Yeah.
some cool moments of different people taking it over.
Yeah, and we also get Dominique Thorne playing the character Riri Williams, who, to those who don't know, is Ironheart in the
Yeah.
comics. Basically the next Iron, not Iron Man, I guess, but Iron Person. But yeah, I totally wasn't expecting that to happen in this movie.
Yeah, it's definitely got so much setup that I'm like, okay, we'll see, but it's cool to get more. They have to sort of rebuild an Avengers team, and it's cool to see how they're doing that with different characters and introducing sort of the next generation of people.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they're doing that because with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, it very much felt like Iron Man was his mentor, and here Riri talks about how like she looked up to Iron Man and was like really sad when he passed away as well. But like she's like really good with tech apparently, and like she's in Wakanda in like a study abroad program, and like this place is like really like it's a good match because of how great their technology is. And so when she's able to use some of their resources to build her own suit, it's like whoa. Well, and like people really do see her as like the spiritual successor to Iron Man, I guess you could say.
Yeah, yeah. It is sort of the same concept, right? As an iron suit with all sorts of cool powers, but a totally different personality, a totally different vibe. It feels very like in Hawkeye. What's her what's her
Kate
name?
Bishop.
Yeah, it feels a little like that. Where it's like a similar skill set, similar style, very different approach. So it'll be interesting to see how that character, because Ironheart comes out in this universe like later this year, so I think it'll be cool to see how that character unfolds.
Yeah, that'll be exciting to see. And like the Atlanteans, they're like the fights are so cool. Like they bring like a giant squid with them, and it's like,
Yeah.
whoa.
It's needed. I mean, if you got Atlantis, you got to have a giant squid,
Yeah. Like, did you have like a favorite fight sequence in this movie?
Yes, in the universe where Okoye is the new Black Panther, there is that epic solo fight with her and like the head of the Atlantean guard guy, um, who is uh John Cena, and it it's so it's like it's such a slow it starts so slow paced. It's a very like intense fight. Sequence is probably like 6 or 7 minutes long, and it's very like this great slow build up and up and up and up. uh Very intense. The music is awesome. um
Oh
yeah, it's
yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about the soundtrack. Like, was there anything that surprised you in the soundtrack?
I mean, it's the same guy from the first one doing most of the stuff, so it
Yeah,
feels a
Ludwig
lot
van
of the same
Goranson.
themes. Yeah, yeah, a lot of the same themes. But there is that one. There's some of the universes like definitely have a different tone, so they set a different thing. And there's that Emerson, Lake and Powell song that just pops up
Oh
in
yeah.
that one universe, and it's so weird.
Yeah, the song Touch and Go,
Yes.
which doesn't feel tonally in line with the rest of the soundtrack. It's like it's
No.
a nice song, but it's weird.
It's weird. I think it's to distinctly show this universe as like a weird part of the multiverse, but still, it's like it's a little jarring.
Yeah, like it happens during a scene where like some of the characters are taking a break, like because they travel to different countries and they're at America at some point, and they go to In and Out where Kel Mitchell plays the clerk. I guess it's like a reference to his role on Good Burger. It was just so unexpected.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe this entire movie. There's so many unexpected cameos,
Yeah.
musically or otherwise.
Yeah, but the soundtrack overall is pretty top notch. Like there were parts where I was like, tapping my foot, like it's just that good.
Yeah, it's got some great orchestration. It has good songs. It it's probably the best part of the movie for me, because the movie has its ups and downs, but I think the soundtrack
Right.
overall is pretty all ups. Even the weirdest one part is still pretty good, and
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily it fits that specific vignette of that world, even though it doesn't seem to make sense in the scope of the movie. It definitely fits that part. So for me, the soundtrack is A+, and the rest of the movie is only aided by the soundtrack.
Right, yeah, because the movie can get kind of bumpy with all this multiverse stuff. Like throughout the movie, I kept getting confused, being like, "Wait a minute, which universe are we following now?" Because like the transitions are kind of not hard cut. It's so it gets like really confusing. It's just kind of overwhelming, honestly.
Especially at the end, where they start to weave a couple of them together into a more like through line of a story. There's a couple parts where I'm like, wait, which version of that character were you? And what are you doing?
Yeah, and like they reference a conversation that like they'll do a callback to a conversation, and I'm sitting there thinking, wait, was this in that universe or this? Oh, all right,
Different one.
whatever.
It's
Just
almost like,
eat my popcorn and watch.
yeah, it's the Prestige. I'm telling you, you gotta watch it again.
Yeah. I haven't watched The Prestige even once. Like I know
Oh,
I need to because it's just yeah.
especially because I've referenced it about 8 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's your homework. Go watch The Prestige.
Right, yeah, maybe after the coup is done and I'm not like scrambling to
Totally. Yeah. Ugh.
this movie, man, like I know some people have criticized the CGI in Marvel movies, but I feel like by this point it's gotten better. Like it doesn't stand out too much as obviously CGI stuff. Like some of it
Mhm.
to the naked eye looks like practical stuff, kind of like it's almost like you can't tell which it is.
Especially like there's so much like underwater sequences and just water sequences in general because of the Atlantis stuff. There's a lot of good CGI around that. Also, like Wakanda and Atlantis look like practical sets, though they're so large, so all scoping. There's no way. Maybe pieces of them, but not the whole thing. They do a great job making all of it look gorgeous. And I feel like it has like Lord of the Rings potential to look back on in 20 years and be like, "That still looks good. Still
Yeah.
looks good," you know? Like it feels very, maybe because they're not trying to go for like weird looks. They're trying to go for a very realistic, honest look, even though it's a fantastical world.
Right.
Maybe that's why it'll stand the test of time, because it feels very realistic and natural, even though it's futuristic.
Yeah, like it feels like they're not trying to emulate Aquaman's Atlantis. Like, they don't have the same colored lights. Like that Atlantis looks cool, but
No, it's not the same at all. It's very the Disney one, which is very simple, right? It's very just like
yeah.
ancient, almost like Mayan city sunken underwater. It feels very like something you'd recognize as ancient Earth that then has sunk.
Yeah, I mean some of the underwater sequences are comparable to even Avatar 2: The Way of Water, which came out at end of last year. So
Yeah,
the
totally.
technology has really progressed.
Really progressed. I mean, yeah, and I'm excited because a lot of the like the Fantastic Four, a lot of that CGI there feels and looks real compared to some of the the old universes
Yeah,
where it looks campy.
yeah, the Thing looks more real than Korg.
Yeah, the Thing looks like a costume, but it's definitely not.
Yeah. What do you think of how the whole war between the two like escalated, how what the result of that was?
I think it puts a very interesting point, because in basically all the universes that get to the point of the two worlds colliding, some of them are throwaway and we don't see anything, but some are more get involved in the Atlantis Wakandan war. I think the progression is very nice. It's cool that it's kind of like the being good humanitarians conquers isolationism. Like in pretty much every world, right? Atlantis loses because of its stance on it's us versus everyone else. And Wakanda bringing in outside help to fight Atlantis is sort of what conquers all.
Yeah, it puts Namor in that position where, like, at the end, he thinks to himself, maybe I was wrong. And he's, like, sort of reflecting. And, like, for some reason, like, I didn't know about this until, like, I looked up trivia afterward. But one of the Atlantean guards has, like, a helmet over his face so that it's concealed. But he has, like, a little line where he's like, my man, and it turns out that's Jason Momoa making a cameo in
Oh my
this.
gosh. Just like on set one day, like give me a cameo.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that. I had no clue.
Yeah, it was just
That's great. Oh, now what's next? They're gonna do a DC Marvel multiverse crossover.
Oh man, like they're both dabbling in multiverse stuff. So it's like, it's the trend right now, man. Like the movies have fully become the comics in terms of the tropes that they use,
Yeah.
like for better or worse.
Totally.
Yeah, I do kind of worry that maybe like the multiverse stuff could be used as a crutch. Like, I get the sense that they're maybe using it as a way to not to like give the filmmakers more creativity so they don't have to be super strict on continuity. But that's all well and good, but I do kind of worry that maybe it could get to a point where it gets a bit nonsensical, like even more nonsensical, I guess. It's like, why care if all this weird stuff is happening? I don't know. Like, what do you think?
This movie feels like the peak for me, right? Like of the nonsensical. There's so much happening that if they continue in this direction, I think it's only downhill.
Mm.
But I think this was like a good experiment. I think they need to pull back a little bit and stick to the through line. This movie suffers for me because there's too many universes. There's too many options presented to me, and only some of them am I invested in. And they do that. They service them. They give you 10 minutes of it, and they move on. But I'm like, it was the 10 minutes that could have been spent in the universe that I care about, actually doing something.
It's weird because the multiverse stuff is a trend, but this is also experimental in a way, so not as like you would think with the word experimental, where we don't associate that with quote unquote trendy.
Mhm.
Um, so it's got like a mix of both. Like it's trying to be an anthology type of movie, but still like using some of those tropes. And it's like, yeah, like this could like if they keep doing more movies like this one, it could become really stale. Whereas if they do more different things, like people could look back at this one and be like, you know what, that was a fine little experiment there. Like, good thing they didn't do more of it, but it was it's aged well type of thing.
Yeah, I think it strikes a balance. It maybe isn't what I wanted, but it strikes a good balance. And if the rest of the movies can, going forward, pull back from that, I think that will help. Um, but yeah, it's 50-50 for me. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I like what they're doing here, and sometimes I'm like, ah, enough multiverse, man, enough multiverse.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, I'm really curious to see where they go from here because like they even said there's gonna be like a Wakanda TV series if I remember correctly. Like
Yes, there
set,
is.
yeah,
Um, so who knows? the TV, the TV. I think they approach it well. They approach it like a longer movie,
right,
um, which I think is helpful as opposed to like episodic. You know, it's sort of like, cool. We have 6 hours to tell this story instead of 2.5. Um, and so they're able to do some deeper dive on stuff. It also creates like the opportunity for filler. Um, there's something interesting about this movie where I'm like, would it have been better serviced as a TV show with each episode a different universe, and then maybe tying them in on the back half, the last 2 or 3 episodes.
right, like a season of What If
Yeah,
in live
it
action.
yeah, it's specifically about Wakanda and this Atlantean war. I think because it's tough to engage with it as a singular arc, but if it was a bunch of mini arcs that tied together at the end, it might have made it more clear to me. But that said, like, I think it found a stride well in the film.
Yeah, and like at the end when they're like looking at the sun setting over the horizon and thinking about everything that's happened, like we get glimpses of like the universes that were and maybe won't be anymore going forward. But like in each of these, basically the same sentiment. Like they talk about how like no matter what happens going forward, Wakanda is forever. And it's just such a great line because like they're a united people no matter which universe. Like it just
Exactly.
really hit home that line.
I love a title in a line. I'll always love that. But I think it that was the whole thematic arc of this was Wakanda is together through the end. They're together with others. They let others in to be a part of whatever Wakanda is. And in some universes that's the Fantastic Four, and in other universes it's just banding together as Wakandans and using that. So it fits well with it ties well back into what the first movie was doing. It just gives us a little bit more of this like weird spice of multiverse Atlantis, different Black Panthers, different approaches to how T'Challa is no longer in the universe, and kind of experiments with that.
Yeah, what'd you think of what they did for the credits?
The post credit scene.
Yeah.
Well, it was weird to have a Stan Lee cameo that they banked for so many years, just waiting for a perfect one. So it was weird to see Stan Lee back. It was cool. but it was definitely weird to be like, what, Stan Lee?
It was weird because like it was in the form of like animation and like a sound clip of him, and
Hmm.
uh basically just looking at it's very meta. It's like him looking at a poster of the movie and looking at the audience be like Excelsior, like it's an old sound bite. And
Yeah.
it kind of weird. Like it's been a few years since his passing, so like I don't expect like more Stan Lee cameos, but it was kind of a nice, neat little thing, I guess.
It made sense for it. It sort of fit with the multiverse vibe, where in some versions of the multiverse, certain characters are gone and others are alive, and so it was interesting to be like, okay, is this an homage to a multiverse for us
Right.
as the viewer, where Stan Lee has not passed and was able to watch whatever version of this
Mm,
movie existed
yeah.
in that universe. So there's like a weird, it sort of just ties in this, like, it was a nice little bow on the multiverse aspect of like, oh, like, yeah, we're watching the MCU have a multiverse, but the concept of multiverse exists everywhere. There could be, just as there are multiple universes, some in which this movie has come out and some where it
Yeah.
doesn't come out till later this year. Uh
And it'll probably be different from how we described it.
exactly. uh I think it was a little bit of a nod to that. Like, there is a multiverse where Stan Lee never dies and is able to watch all the MCUs until the world is eaten by the sun.
Right. And I liked how it was similar to the Big Hero 6 animation. Like
Yeah.
it looked like his character from that, but it was very obviously meant to be Stan Lee himself.
Yeah. Looking at a poster of this movie, so, like, very, we talked about how meta this movie is. That was like a cherry on top of the meta sundae, like,
Yeah, and I loved how we had the concept art like throughout the credits. Like I just love when movies do that. Like How to Train Your Dragon 2,
mm,
like it just so gorgeous, that artwork. And so I loved it here too. Like I gotta read like the if there's an art book for this, I gotta read it, man.
yeah, I mean, there probably will be, because it's a gorgeous movie and the concept art is cool. The concept art is cool because so there's so many amazing, we're dealing with so many worlds. We've got Wakanda, we've got Atlantis, and then we have the multiverse versions of those, and they're not all the same. Different versions of them are different. And so to sort of like have all this artwork of riffing on, like, this is Wakanda, but in this specific universe where this has happened, so it looks a little different. And then to see that drawn out is very cool.
So how does this stack up as a sequel, in your opinion?
For me, it feels less like a direct sequel to the
Right.
Black Panther story and more like an MCU sequel. In that regard, not a huge fan. It's tough for me. I think it does a great job. I enjoy the storylines, but it's a lot of the movie for me feels like set up for a larger multiversal connection in a lot of the upcoming movies. Again, it feels like a major stepping stone to that. So, and some of that is circumstance, right? If
Right.
like, how do you do a direct sequel to Chadwick's story without him? You can't. So you have to make some changes. So I think they did a good job working in that new sandbox. But to me, it feels like this is a very deep experimental take, um, on a thing that I'm getting a little worn out of.
Yeah. Like as much as multiverses can be cool, it's like they've done this like in 4 Marvel movies within this past year now, so it's like it's like too much too quick.
Yeah, I'm I'm waiting for what it all means. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm ready for the answer.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It doesn't feel like a direct sequel. Like it's definitely not a traditional sequel. It's more of, like we said, an anthology. It's a Wakanda movie overall, I would say, as opposed to just a Black Panther movie, which
Yeah.
itself makes a nice transition to like future TV stuff. But yeah, like I think compared to the first one, I definitely like the first one more, but I kind of like how this one was somewhat different.
Yeah, it's cool that it's different. It's unlike any of the Marvel sequels because it's so different. Um, and I admire it for that. You know, they really they said, you know what, we're gonna have to do something different, and they ran in that direction. But yeah, for me, it's a little clunky. It's a little weird. It feels a
Yeah.
little like it's servicing the larger world.
All right. So, what are your final thoughts and score out of 10 and unit of measurement for that score for Black
Sure.
Panther Wakanda Forever?
I would say for me, it overall the handling of Chadwick's passing and the homage they give to that is huge. That for
Mm.
me is a big aspect of the movie, and the soundtrack is stellar. The clunkiness of the multiverse, the execution of sort of the vignettes, and different tying together of all these different universes feels a little off to me, and that's hurts the score
Yeah.
ultimately for me. It is a 4 out of 10. It's a 4 out of 10, and the unit of measurement for that, it's a 4 out of 10. Kel Mitchell cameos, honestly, 4 out of 10. Um, I think I think parts of it, like certain storylines, are 10 out of 10, but I think the overall effects of the movie on me is it's a little bit disappointing. I think it will make more sense when more stuff comes out. It's the prestige. When more context is given, I think it will be better. But I think it right as it stands solo, it's really hard for me to see that what piece it is in the larger puzzle until more of that puzzle is revealed. So 4 out of 10, Cal Mitchells.
Yeah. Wow, that's much lower than I was gonna go.
Mm,
Like, it's definitely not as good as the first movie, but I feel like I don't know, like I enjoyed the pacing of it, even though it was kind of frenetic and hard to follow at times. But it's yeah, I don't know. It's like kind of average overall, I guess I would say. So I guess I would give this one, and again, like we like just saw it like last night, so maybe it's
it's
just
true.
too recent. But right now, I'm feeling 7 out of 10 giant squids.
Yes, the
Like,
giant squid is very cool.
yeah, I think some of the acting saves it for me. It makes it more palatable, I
Sure.
guess. And like, there's just like a lot of technical achievements that I admire. But yeah, it definitely could have been better, I suppose. And I know it's like harder to make a better, like, make a sequel that one ups the first movie. Like, it's hard to do that without Chadwick. But I do think maybe if they didn't rely on this multiverse stuff, it could have been a better sequel, if like not necessarily better than the first movie.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to. I'm not insulting the acting. I think the acting across the board is brilliant.
Right.
Uh, I don't know. Maybe I'm just like running on fumes from all the coup stuff we've been seeing. But for me, it
Yeah.
was just like, woof. Maybe I came into it with too high of hopes. I was like, oh, it's gonna be, I would give OG Black Panther a 10 out of 10. So to come in and be
Yeah.
like, oh, it's got to be at least a 9 out of 10,
Yeah,
and then to
first
have it,
one's at least a 9 for me. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it's that, but yeah, it's not hitting it for me. It's still good. It's a Marvel movie, right? So that's always gonna be baseline good.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. We've been going to different like improv shows and workshops these past couple of days, and it's just so like it's hard for some of that to not overshadow the experience of just watching a movie, because it's like not quite as interactive as like watching a show or doing a workshop. So it's
Totally.
yeah, like throwing that into the mix, like I can get that. Yeah. Before we do the plugs, we actually have an email from a friend of the show. So I'll go ahead and read that and we can respond.
Yeah.
So this is Oliver once again. He says, "Dear Delayed Replay Steven, just listened to the latest episode of Delayed Replay. In it, you mentioned Gravity Falls. In one scene in one episode, Stan drops a notebook, a pen, and a mug with a question mark into a portal. In an episode of Rick and Morty that was broadcast before the Gravity Falls episode, the items appear in a blink and you'll miss it scene. I haven't seen Gravity Falls, but I've heard good reviews about it. However, I've watched Rick and Morty, and it is brilliant. Love the podcast. Keep up the good work. Oliver Titcomb from that other universe where the films he reviewed got delayed." Uh, so Vinny, have you seen Gravity Falls?
Only a tiny bit, not a lot.
Oh, okay. I've watched the whole series twice.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
It's awesome, and people love it. But just strapped for time.
Yeah, it's not too long of a series. It only had 2 seasons, I think. I watched it back in 2016 and then rewatched it last year, I think. It's really good. Like, it's basically kind of like Twin Peaks, but for kids. Like, it's got that mystery in the Pacific Northwest aspect, but of course it doesn't have like the violence and all that, but it does have like a bit of like paranormal stuff. And yeah, and I actually recently watched a show called Wonder Falls, which came out in 2004, and it has like the same font that Gravity Falls uses, weirdly enough.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, the creator of Wonder Falls, Brian Fuller, he also made the shows Dead Like Me, Pushing Daisies, and Hannibal, and he's definitely influenced by Twin Peaks and David Lynch.
Totally.
But yeah, what about Rick and Morty? Have you seen Rick and Morty?
I've seen some of Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty's very hit and miss for me. I feel like when it hits, and it's very funny. And when it doesn't, to me, it's just like, great. 20 minutes I don't get back. So that show, I haven't seen it all. I know a lot of people are like, well, it does get better as you go on. But for me, it's very like up and down, where some episodes I'm just like, I didn't laugh once. And then other episodes I'm nonstop laughing. So it just depends.
Yeah, Gravity Falls is a show where I don't think there's any bad episode.
That's awesome.
Yeah, whereas Rick and Morty, like, it has some really great thought-provoking stuff. Like, it has some great episodes, but it also has at least a few or maybe several episodes that are just straight up garbage and just shouldn't have been made. It's like it just felt like the show was trying too hard to be edgy and offensive. It's just blah.
Yeah, it totally, and maybe that's just my humor, but some episodes I'm just like, yeah, that sucked. Okay. Which makes it hard to watch, especially like, I don't know, like I'm not caught up at all. I wasn't really watching it live as it was coming out. So I'm very like, you know, when you get one of those episodes, you're like, okay, new show, gonna switch to a different show right now. I'm not gonna watch another episode of this tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's even worse if you're watching it live week to week, because it's like you wait for an episode, and if it turns out to be terrible, it's like, damn it.
Yeah.
You have to wait another week.
That's how I feel about The Walking Dead.
Oh, see, I feel like Walking Dead got good again, like toward the end, but
I think it's good now.
Yeah, like no spoilers there. So
yeah, no spoilers. Just think it's good. Well, it's already all finished in our universe.
Right. And yeah, with Rick, I feel like there was like Rick and Morty, that's another thing that deals with the multiverse weirdly, but there's also a show called Solar Opposites that's by the same creators, and it's also pretty good. It's on Hulu. Yeah, it deals with aliens living on Earth, and it's pretty funny. And there's like this side story that kind of overshadows the like normal story, and it's just like so well written. But yeah, it's worth checking out.
Cool.
All right.
Always down for recommendations.
Yeah. I still need to watch Schitt's Creek like 2 years after you like recommended it.
Always recommend Schitt's Creek. Always. I'll recommend it again. Watch Schitt's Creek.
Yeah, I will. Like one time, I made a Facebook post where I was like, "Shit's Creek," more like "Shit's Week," and then in parentheses I said, "JK, I don't watch much television," which is a lie because I do watch a lot of
I
television.
was gonna say you watch so much TV.
Yeah, like I haven't seen the show, but yeah, at some point I like have this list of like shows I'm watching. And it's like divided between shows that like reruns and shows that are currently airing. I've got like 9 on the like older shows and like 13 on the currently airing shows that aren't like
Yeah.
on a break right now. So
Yeah,
it's
all my
a
shows came back
process.
at once. I'm like, oh my, trying to catch up on all my shows, and they all came back. I'm like,
Yeah.
jeez. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that email, Oliver. Always good to hear from you. And people can email the podcast at delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on In and Out. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me, Vinny. Where can people find the stuff that you or your other self are involved with?
In both universes, I'm a performer at Comedy Sports Chicago. So go ahead and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, anything like that. We do virtual shows, but also in both universes, we do live shows, which are in person in Chicago. So if any listeners out my way, feel free to hit me up on Instagram or Facebook and come see a show.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. It's great that improv like is just so entertaining and very therapeutic. So always great to have that.
Totally, it's the reason we're here at the Cuda Comedy Festival.
Yeah. As for my plugs, people can go to stevenshinder.com for info on my book, Lemons and Like Rain. The next one, Trespassing Through the Visages, should be out sometime later this year. I've just been, there's just been like some other stuff I've had to take care of. Like I'm distracted by the coup like right now, so among other things.
Totally.
You can follow me at Steven Shinder on Instagram and Twitter, Steven Shinder Storytelling on Facebook. You can also find me on podcasts that me and my dad do called Yes Shift, where we talk about the progressive rock band Yes and people involved with the band. We've interviewed a couple former members like Oliver Wakeman and Bill Bruford, and even interviewed a couple authors, Dave Watkinson and Stephen Lamb, and talked about the book Yes in the 1980s. So yeah, very great stuff. Yeah, and the next delayed replay episode, which comes out May 21st, will be a second anniversary show. And yeah. And as a little hint, it'll involve discussion of a certain place that is quiet. So I'll just leave that head scratcher for y'all to figure out.
Whatever could it be?
Right, but that'll be it. And without further delay, have a good day.